Welcome to Trash Talk with Trista, a podcast from Ramsey, Washington Recycling and Energy. I'm Executive Director Trista Martinson. Here on Trash Talk with Trista, we explore the people, partnerships, and innovative ideas helping transform waste into valuable resources while building healthier communities and a more sustainable future. Today, we're taking listeners behind the scenes of one of Minnesota's favorite traditions, the Minnesota State Fair. Joining me are Cory Franzmeier, Operations Director of Facilities for the Minnesota State Fair, and Megan Dobratz, Founder and President of Native Sustainability. Together, we'll discuss what it takes to manage sustainability and waste for nearly 2 million visitors each year. Cory Franzmeier has worked at the Minnesota State Fair for 20 years, what a great job, and has served as a full-time operations director of facilities for the past 13 years. He oversees sanitation, recycling, grounds maintenance, equipment, building cleaning, and horticulture, helping transform the fairgrounds into a temporary city every August. Megan Dobratz is founder and president of Native Sustainability, a consulting firm helping organizations turn waste into opportunity while reducing costs and improving environmental performance. Her clients include the Minnesota State Fair, the Metropolitan Airports Commission, the Shakopee and Wahkiton Sioux community, and Environmental Initiative's Sustainable Growth Coalition. Together, Cory and Megan have helped make the Minnesota State Fair a national model for event sustainability. Welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And I bet this is a super busy time for you because the fair is just around the corner. So thanks for taking time out to come talk to us.
It's still July, so we're almost there.
Is there a moment when it all gets to like panic mode or have you got it down to a science now?
Got it down to a science. I think everybody handles it differently. So, I mean, I feel like there's a pace to it, and we're kind of started that pace. And, next week we kind of ramp up, extend our hours a little bit. And so that's when we'll really start to feel it. That calendar will hit August, and we'll start working, a little extra hours and doing some extra things. And, the requests for tasks will start rolling in, and that's when we'll really start feeling it.
Yeah. What does that look like to build a city? August hits, you're going to build a city that 2 million people show up. It becomes the second largest city in Minnesota, right? Something like that.
Well, yeah, I guess I've heard, when it comes to, it's like the third largest city in Minnesota for about 12 days.
Yes.
It's interesting, right? I mean, because it's, the streets are pretty quiet and different things throughout the year. And then all of a sudden it just ramps up, and gates are being built, and all the things that have been hiding throughout the winter months in buildings all of a sudden start reappearing again. The ticket booths, the information booths, and all those kinds of things. We do have a few little warm ups throughout the year where we put on the kickoff to summer event that we do around Memorial Weekend, and then we still host the MSRA Back to the 50s car show. So those are kind of a couple warm up things that kind of bring a little life to the fairgrounds before the big show.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest challenges as the vendors start coming in? You got 4-H'ers starting to come in. Mm-hmm. What are those challenges?
I think a lot of it's so intense for about 6 weeks, right? So you kind of have, about 10 months where you're building and you're creating and you're meeting and you're conversating and you're prepping, and then all of a sudden everyone shows up and starts it. So it's just people, right? I mean, so you're just kind of like all of a sudden, boom, your grounds are alive and it's time to do this. And that's kind of what I've always, feel like it's just, you just kind of know when it's that time. And really, when it comes to 4-H'ers and vendors and all that, we're all partners, right? So we all need each other. So, in a lot of ways, we're all pitching in and contributing somehow, some way to build the city, this fair and this, crazy event that brings 2 million people for 12 days.
That's right. So Minnesotans come to the fair for lots of reasons, but I'm going to guess the number one is to eat, right?
I would think, I would think. I mean, it's, the excitement that the new food, reveal creates, and the new sips, the new beer and stuff like that. But, I think, everybody has their thing.
That's right.
Right? I mean, some people, I got to get to the barns and see this, and I got to ride the sky glider or the space tower, or, I love sitting at the band show for, a few hours and listening to whoever it is. It might not even be my kind of music, but food's what drives it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people love the food, but I think everybody kind of has their thing,
That's right.
and some, and it could be someone with food, but it might be like 3 things. They just come eat their 3 things and then whatever. And some people only eat the new stuff, but I think everybody has their different thing of what the fair is for them.
Yeah. And so with all that food, though, that means there's a lot of waste. So let's talk trash.
Let's get to business.
Let's get to business. How much waste is produced at the fair every year?
Well, I mean, in grand total, I mean, it's, like waste, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there's solid waste and, do we want to, say
Let's
cardboard is waste.
We're working to break it down, right?
Yep. So I just, like I said, people like to say, oh, the waste, and it's just like garbage. But like, we're taking a lot of that stuff and we're getting it out of the solid waste. I mean, the solid waste number is high, right? I mean, we're looking at, 1,000 tons and, in 12, 13 days,
Right.
But we're also diverting, 80 tons of organics out of that waste stream, 130 tons of cardboard and 65 tons of commingled recycling, and all the construction waste, and getting that out of the solid waste stream. So, and also the, in the livestock area, all that animal bedding and the animal waste also, gets out of that solid waste stream. So we are diverting quite a bit and getting it to the proper places. So
yeah, you all have worked really hard to make sure you're separating. Like, this has been a long process. Megan, how has recycling and sustainability changed over the years at the fair?
Yeah, I was looking back at the numbers recently too, and I'm like, the total hasn't changed that much, which I think is impressive in its own right because attendance keeps going up. So to be able to find those reduction opportunities, but since we've been involved since 2014, I looked back, we've really expanded recycling capacity and capabilities from new signage, a bunch of additional bins, rolling out more back of house composting, food waste collection from the vendors, and then constantly looking for additional streams that we can find and divert from. We didn't used to do a bunch of metal, and now those numbers have gone up. So finding more of that back of house kind of C&D construction and demo opportunities
I
too.
suppose people don't realize that you're building booths, you're building exhibits. That's construction, and it's got to go somewhere when the fair is over, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And this year looking at can we add back in pallet wrap and stretch film, that sort of stuff from the, because people are coming and unloading everything as well before they're building and then taking down things too. So always new things that we can identify and divert that way.
That's awesome. How do you think the State Fair stands out compared to other really big events, like in sustainability?
I think we're doing great. I think it's very Minnesotan in that we don't always talk about what's happening. And so that's part of it. But as Cory mentioned, it's the logistics attached to this event are insane. And the grounds that need to be covered, over 300 acres, is that right?
322 acres.
Wow.
So you think about the feet on the, people on the ground doing that sort of stuff. And so there's been constant conversation about what can be next. And I think the biggest challenge, too, is that you get a short amount of time to try something, and then you have to wait a year to try it again. And so I think that impacts the impact of the full-size event in addition to the size of the event, but just the scale. So it's easier to do this stuff when you have 6 blocks to work with versus over 300 acres. So I think they're doing a really great job. You also have to think about the diversity of the people coming in.
Yes.
The vendors coming from all over the country. And so education isn't the same. Labels aren't the same other places. So there's just so many different factors that for all of that added in, I think we're doing a really great job.
Yeah, human behavior is the hardest part of the waste industry. We struggle with that too, and we operate every single day.
Right.
And thinking about the education, and then how do you very quickly educate people who are so excited and overstimulated at the same time to do the right thing. What do you think the biggest misconceptions visitors have about recycling at the fair is?
Well, I think part of it is as we try to add new things, and we have to re-educate every year, right?
Yes.
So I think one of the big things we've been trying to push is the cups. So even since we've been involved. There used to be styrofoam used, and that's no longer. And so now every cup that comes at the state fair is recyclable. So that is a huge opportunity to make sure that that's ending up in the right bin and that we can divert that way too.
So let's say that loud. Cups at the fair are recyclable. Please don't put them in the trash.
Yes.
Put them in a recycling bin.
Well, what's interesting about that, if we go history lesson of kind of what evolved recycling for us, was originally we had a cup recycling program, but it was styrofoam cups because there was a market for that. So we had the 2 bins, and it was a strictly styrofoam cup recycling bin that all went to one place and got all compacted up and shipped out, because there was a market in the early 90s for that styrofoam. So, it all started getting the pallets, the cardboard, and those styrofoam cups out of the waste stream years before I even worked there. So it's definitely was rolling long before I was there, and we're just kind of keeping it on track here.
The Minnesota State Fair continues to innovate in every way, thinking about what's different for sustainability. So you got 2 million people coming here in a few weeks. That even makes me nervous, and I don't work there. What can visitors, what can they do to help?
Well, I think it'd just be conscious, right? I mean, a lot of it's, we have over 1,000 waste bins, over 850 recycling bins. And so, like, if you take a little bit of time and you drink it, there's plenty of recycling bins to put those in. And if you eat it, put it in our waste bin. And, like I said, the future of all that, we're hoping to be more innovative with what we can do with the waste. But for now, it's like, if you drink it, recycle it. If you eat it, throw it in the waste, and we'll see what we can do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's fantastic. And other than the corn, right? Everyone knows the corn on the cob. If you've been to the fair, there's a place to put your corn cobs. Are there other places for organics for customers, or not yet? Or is that back of the house? Let's talk organics.
It's more back of house.
Okay.
So, I mean, a lot of like the prep, whatever waste is left over from the prep, we provide, either, 96-gallon containers for vendor booths that are more off the beaten path, but everybody that's kind of in those more bulk areas, they all have, a 6-yard or 2 6-yard waste dumpsters behind the scenes to put those leftover organics. One thing that, we'll keep an eye on more too, just, to see where it's at. But like, we feel like a lot of the food waste on the consumer side, there isn't much.
Right.
Because, either you're eating it all or you're sharing it with family or those kinds of things. And a lot of it's just a little bit left over. Maybe it's that boat that you were dipping your cheese in, and that's all that's left. Or like that little bit of, hunk from a pork chop bone or something on a stick. But like, I feel like, a lot of what's going in the waste is just waste, and not so much of the food waste. But, trying to come up with creative ways to capture more of that consumer waste is definitely something we're very mindful of.
Yeah. So thinking about that, what do you see on the future? I mean, Megan, you study this. You're looking. You're trying to figure out where can we innovate, because we want the Minnesota State Fair to keep that title. Yeah. Right. What do you think? What excites you? What's next?
I think that the region is getting a lot more capability to manage some of this with pre-processing. So we've talked about, can we, because so much of this comes down to people standing at the bin and making that right choice. And we know that it's a bunch of people whose focus at this time and during the fair is not necessarily in where their waste is going. So what can we look at with taking that material maybe somewhere else to get sorted out and find more of that recyclables in there, find more of that food waste. So looking at potential for that, which knowing that, we have great resources coming down the line with you guys. But we've attempted to do some front of the house organics collection, and it's tricky. It is tricky. Especially when it's not system wide. And so finding those sorts of innovations that we can use through technology and taking that away from the people having to make the right decisions.
Yes, we need to make it easy for folks, especially in that moment of it's crowded. They need to get to the next food booth or the new sip. Right? To really make it easy for folks, and then also so that they trust that it's happening on the back end. Right.
And we want to provide that. We don't want to just, say, hey, compost this, and then the right thing isn't happening. And
Right.
and I think that's a little bit of, what can people do?
Yes.
The future is our hope, and I've been probably saying this for 10 years, and Megan's heard me, is like, I want to get to a point where, like, instead of you drink it, you recycle it, you eat it, you throw it in the waste. It's you drink it, you recycle it, you eat it, it's being composted.
Yes.
Right? That's the
Yeah.
goal. So,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it's going to take a lot to get there. I mean, it's 322 acres. There's, a light day's 150,000 people, a big day's 200. And, all this waste is being moved by people walking. It's not like this thing where we just, we had a good day, and then all of a sudden it just comes in and gets cleaned up. I mean, that thing is being maintained all day long by people walking and pulling waste and maintaining the restrooms and all that kind of stuff on foot. And so, to try to get everything and keep it look nice,
Right.
and fair opens at 7 a.m. and it closes at 11. So it's like you've only got a handful of hours to make it look like no one was there the day before too.
Right.
So it's quite an interesting, situation.
So are you
Logistical
working?
feat,
Are you working overnights? Or you're just on the clock for two weeks?
Yeah,
straight?
I'm just there. I'm
Yeah.
just there, and I'm doing it. I mean, I have great team, great
Yeah.
folks around, and I don't work overnight. I don't 20, but I'm available. I'm available if needed. But my core hours, about 5, 6 a.m. till about 10 p.m. is kind
Wow.
of when I'm there, and then get a little rest in the evening and do it all over again. So.
Yeah. I was telling you before we started, my youngest son just turned 16. He's going to have his first job ever at the Minnesota State Fair.
it.
And he's going to be working in the food building doing waste cleanup. So kind of
Nice.
ironic. He's pretty excited about it. So
That's great. It should be a good experience for him. I look forward to, like we were talking, it just kind of, some eyes and ears on maybe what the back of house looks there,
Right.
from
We'll
an
get some
insider.
Intel from
Yeah,
from
get some
a
intel.
youngster.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Favorite fair food?
If Megan's ready, she can go first.
Oh, cheese curds. I mean, I can't. I need to share a thing with about 14 other people, but I would like to eat one or two.
It's funny when you're there for 12. You're not going to sit and rip fair food for 15 hours a day for 13 days, but there's some classics. I mean, the corn is always fantastic. It never disappoints. Sometimes when it gets busy, you don't really have a lot of time to eat, and it's a block away from our main building where we work out of is a corn dog stand called Big Dog Corn Dogs that seems to get a lot of my business, basically because of location, but pretty solid as well. So.
I love it. It is interesting. People have the whole debate, corn dog, pronto pup, right? I'll be honest. I'm an alligator on a stick girl.
Ooh,
that's my
nice.
annual treat, and then whatever's new.
There you
Good,
go.
good, yeah.
Yes. What's the hidden attraction that people don't know about but should know about?
Good question.
Geez, hidden attraction I think I don't even know if it's hidden, but I think you got to take one ride on the Sky Glider every year.
Yeah, there you
get
go.
above ground, your feet are dangling, you got a good bird's eye of the deal. I mean, that's an attraction that I make sure I go on at least once a year. The rest of them, maybe it's hit or miss, but I definitely take a ride or two on the Sky Glider every year.
I like the dog show way up in the corner.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a dog show.
Right?
Yeah, well, Doc Dog, we had turf for him and everything. Yep,
Wow.
It's attached with the lumberjacks, so they use the
Okay.
same pool. So when the I don't know
Oh, yes.
the
Yeah.
actual schedule of it, but I know they don't have the lumberjacks and the dogs at the same time.
That would be a new
I know.
show.
New
That would be a new
But,
attraction.
they use the same pool, and I don't know
That's
how
up
they
by the
schedule it.
Leinenkugel's Lodge, right?
No,
Is that
it's
the
up by
hangar?
Giggles by
Yep.
the
by the
Eco
hangar.
Experience.
Oh, yeah, the
Yep.
Eco Experience.
Which, of course, you have to go to the eco.
Well, I guess
Yes.
what dogs are you talking about? Though you're talking about
That's
the
true, because there's one over by the hangar, too, isn't there?
well, you're talking about like the pet pavilion kind of.
Wherever
dog
the
breeders.
creatures are, I just want to.
And I was thinking of the dogs that
The
jump in the
lawn-
pool.
Yes.
So
Oh, wow.
both of them.
Amazing.
there's a lot of dogs.
I'm
up north.
learning new about dogs on
A
the
lot of
north
dogs.
end of the fair. We got to do that. Well, thank you both so much for being here. Give us a little insight in what's happening at the fair, and people can really help us by doing the right thing. If they drink it, recycle it.
Yep.
If they eat it, it's going in the trash for now, but we're working on that too. And recycling's real. It's really happening, and we can feel good about the Great Minnesota Get Together. Thank you for joining another episode of Trash Talk with Trista. Every conversation reminds us that waste isn't just something we throw away. It's an opportunity to recover resources, protect our environment, strengthen our communities, and build a more sustainable future. Whether you're recycling a little more, preventing waste before it starts, supporting innovative technologies, or simply sharing what you've learned today, every action makes a difference. Until next time, I'm Trista Martinson. Today's trash could be tomorrow's resource. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for being here, both of you.
Thanks for having us.